The Big Time by Fritz Leiber. Chapter 1. Enter 3 Hussars. When shall we 3 meet again? In thunder, lightning, or in rain? When the hurly-burly's done, when the battle's lost and won. Macbeth. My name is Greta Forzane. 29 and a party girl would describe me. I was born in Chicago of Scandinavian parents, but now I operate chiefly outside space and time. Not in heaven or hell, if there are such places, but not in the cosmos or universe you know either. I am not as romantically entrancing as the immortal film star, who also bears my first name. But I have a rough and ready charm of my own. I need it, for my job is to nurse back to health and kid back to sanity soldiers badly roughed up in the biggest war going. This war is the Change War, a war of time travelers. In fact, our private name for being in this war is being on the big time. Our soldiers fight by going back to change the past, or even ahead to change the future, in ways to help our side win the final victory, 1 billion or more years from now. A long killing business, believe me. You don't know about the Change War, but it's influencing your lives all the time, and maybe you've had hints of it without realizing. Have you ever worried about your memory? Because it doesn't seem to be bringing you exactly the same picture of the past from one day to the next? Have you ever been afraid that your personality was changing because of forces beyond your knowledge or control? Have you ever felt sure that sudden death was about to jump you from nowhere? Have you ever been scared of ghosts, not the storybook kind, but the billions of beings who were once so real and strong? It's hard to believe they'll just sleep harmlessly forever. Have you ever wondered about those things you may call devils or demons? Spirits able to range through all time and space, through the hot hearts of stars and the cold skeleton of space between the galaxies. Have you ever thought that the whole universe might be a crazy, mixed-up dream? If you have, you've had hints of the Change War. How I got recruited into the Change War, how it's conducted, what the two sides are, why you don't consciously know about it, what I really think about it. You'll learn in due course. The place outside the cosmos where I and my pals do our nursing job, I simply call the place. A lot of my nursing consists of amusing and humanizing soldiers, fresh back from raids into time. In fact, my formal title is entertainer, and I've got my silly side, as you'll find out. My pals are 2 other gals and 3 guys from quite an assortment of times and places. We're a pretty good team, and with Sid bossing, we run a pretty good recuperation station, though we have our family troubles. But most of our troubles come slamming into the place with the beat-up soldiers, who've generally just been going through hell and want to raise some of their own. As a matter of fact, it was 3 newly arrived soldiers who started this thing I'm going to tell you about. This thing that showed me so much about myself and everything. When it started, I had been on the big time for 1,000 sleeps and 2,000 nightmares, and working in the place for 501,000. This 2 nightmares routine every time you lay down your dizzy little head is rough, but you pretend to get used to it because being on the big time is supposed to be worth it. The place is midway in size and atmosphere between a large nightclub where the entertainers sleep in and a small Zeppelin hangar decorated for a party, though a Zeppelin is one thing we haven't had yet. You go out of the place, but not often if you have any sense and if you are an entertainer like me, into the cold light of a morning filled with anything from the earlier dinosaurs to the later spacemen, who look strangely similar except for size. Solely on doctor's orders, I have been on cosmic leave 6 times since coming to work at the place, meaning I have had 6 brief vacations, if you care to call them that, for believe me, they are busman's holidays, considering what goes on in the place all the time. The last one I spent in Renaissance Rome, where I got a crush on Cesare Borgia, but I got over it. Vacations are for the birds anyway, because they have to be fitted by the spiders into serious operations of the Change War, and you can imagine how restful that makes them. See those soldiers changing the past? You stick along with them. Don't go too far up front though, but don't wander off either. Relax and enjoy yourself. Ha! Now the kind of recuperation soldiers get when they come to the place is a horse of a far brighter color, simply dazzling by comparison. Entertainment is our business, and we give them a bang-up time and send them staggering happily back into action, though once in a great while something may happen to throw a wee shadow on the party. I am dead in some ways, but don't let that bother you. I am lively enough in others. If you met me in the cosmos, you would be more apt to yak with me or try to pick me up than to ask a cop to do same, or a father to douse me with holy water, unless you are one of those hard-boiled reformer types. But you are not likely to meet me in the cosmos because Bar, Basin Street, and the Prater, 15th century Italy and Augustan Rome, until they spoiled it, are my favorite, vacation spots. And, as I have said, I stick as close to the place as I can. It is really the nicest place in the whole change world. Crisis. I even think of it capitalized. Anywho, when this thing started, I was twiddling my thumbs on the couch nearest the piano and thinking it was too late to do my fingernails, and whoever came in probably wouldn't notice them anyway. The place was jumpy like it always is on an approach, and the gray velvet of the void around us was curdled with the uneasy lights you see when you close your eyes in the dark. Sid was tuning the maintainers for the pickup, and the right shoulder of his gold-worked gray doublet was streaked where he'd been wiping his face on it with quick ducks of his head. Beauregard was leaning as close as he could over Sid's other shoulder, one white-trousered knee neatly indenting the rose plush of the control divan, and he wasn't missing a single flicker of Sid's old fingers on the dials. Beau's co-pilot besides piano player. Beau's face had that dead blank look it must have had when every double eagle he owned and more he didn't were riding on the next card to be turned in the gambling saloon on one of those wedding cake Mississippi steamboats. Doc was soused as usual, sitting at the bar with his top hat pushed back and his knitted shawl pulled around him, his wide eyes seeing whatever horrors a life in Nazi-occupied Tsarist Russia can add to being a drunk demon in the change world. Maud, who was the old girl, and Lily, the new girl of course, were telling the big beads of their identical pearl necklaces. You might say that all us entertainers were a bit edgy. Being demons doesn't automatically make us brave. Then the red telltale on the major maintainer went out, and the door began to darken in the void facing Sid and Beau. And I felt change winds blowing hard, and my heart missed a couple of beats. And the next thing 3 soldiers had stepped out of the cosmos and into the place, their first 3 steps hitting the floor hard as they changed times and weights. They were dressed as officers of hussars, as we'd been advised, and, praise the bonny dew, I saw that the first of them was Eric, my own dear little commandant, the pride of the von Hohenwalds and the terror of the snakes. Behind him was some hard-faced Roman or other, and beside Eric and shouldering into him as they stamped forward was a new boy, blonde, with a face like a Greek god who's just been touring a Christian hell. They were uniformed exactly alike in black, shakos, fur-edged pelisses, boots and so forth, with white skull emblems on the shakos. The only difference between them was that Eric had a collar on his wrist, and the new boy had a black gauntleted glove on his left hand and was clenching the mate in it, his right hand being bare like both of Eric's and the Romans. "You've made it, lads, hearts of gold," Sid boomed at them, and Beau twitched a smile and murmured something courtly, and Maud began to chant, "Shut the door." And the new girl copied her and I joined in because the change winds do blow like crazy when the door is open, even though it can't ever be shut tight enough to keep them from leaking through. "Shut it before it blows wrinkles in our faces," Maud called in her gammon voice to break the ice, looking like a skinny teenager in the tight, knee-length frock she'd copied from the new girl. But the 3 soldiers weren't paying attention. The Roman, I remembered his name was Mark, was blundering forward stiffly, as if there were something wrong with his eyes, while Eric and the new boy were yelling at each other about a kid and Einstein and a summer palace and a bloody glove and the snakes having booby-trapped St. Petersburg. Eric had that taut, sadistic smile he gets when he wants to hit me. The new boy was in a tearing rage. "Why'd you pull us out so bloody fast? We fair chewed the Nevsky Prospect to pieces galloping away." "Didn't you feel their stun guns, Dummkopf, when they sprung the trap? Too soon, Gott sei Dank?" Eric demanded. "I did," the new boy told him. "Not enough to numb a cat. Why didn't you show us action?" "Shut up. I'm your leader. I'll show you action enough." "You won't. You're a filthy Nazi coward. Weibischer Engländer. Bloody Hun. Schlange." The blond lad knew enough German to understand that last crack. He threw back his sable-edged pelisse to clear his sword arm, and he swung away from Eric, which bumped him into Beau. At the first sign of the quarrel, Beau had raised himself from the divan as quickly and silently as no, I won't use that word, and slithered over to them. "Sirs, you forget yourselves," he said sharply, off balance, supporting himself on the new boy's upraised arm. "This is Sidney Lessingham's place of entertainment and recuperation. There are ladies—" With a contemptuous snarl, the new boy shoved him off and snatched with his bare hand for his saber. Bo reeled against the divan. It caught him in the shins and he fell toward the maintainers. Sid whisked them out of the way as if they were a couple of beach radios. Simply nothing in the place is nailed down, and had them back on the coffee table before Bo hit the floor. Meanwhile, Eric had his saber out and had parried the new boy's first wild slash and lunged in return, and I heard the scream of steel and the rutch of his boot on the diamond-studded pavement. Bo rolled over and came up, pulling from the ruffles of his shirt bosom a derringer I knew was some other weapon in disguise. A stun gun, or even an atropos. Besides scaring me damp for Eric and everybody, that brought me up short. Us entertainers' nerves must be getting as naked as the soldiers', probably starting when the spiders canceled all cosmic leaves 20 sleeps back. Sid shot Bo his look of command, rapped out, "I'll handle this, you horse on firebrand," and turned to the minor maintainer. I noticed that the telltale on the major was glowing a reassuring red again, and I found a moment to thank Mama Devi that the door was shut. Maud was jumping up and down, cheering I don't know which, nor did she, I bet. And the new girl was white, and I saw that the sabers were working more businesslike. Eric's flicked again, and came away from the blonde lad's cheek spilling a couple of red drops. The blonde lad lunged fiercely. Eric jumped back, and the next moment, they were both floating helplessly in the air, twisting like they had cramps. I realized quick enough that Sid had shut off gravity in the door and stores sectors of the place, leaving the rest of us firm on our feet in the refresher and surgery sectors. The place has sectional gravity to suit our extraterrestrial buddies. Those crazy ETs sometimes come whooping in for recuperation in very mixed batches. From his central position, Sid called out, kindly enough but taking no nonsense, "All right, lads, you've had your fun. Now sheathe those swords." For a second or so, the two black hussars drifted and contorted. Eric laughed harshly and neatly obeyed. The commandant is used to free fall. The blonde lad stopped writhing, hesitated while he glared upside down at Eric and managed to get his saber into its scabbard, although he turned a slow somersault doing it. Then Sid switched on their gravity, slow enough so they wouldn't get sprained landing. Eric laughed, lightly this time, and stepped out briskly toward us. He stopped to clap the new boy firmly on the shoulder and look him in the face. "So, now you get a good scar," he said. The other didn't pull away, but he didn't look up, and Eric came on. Sid was hurrying toward the new boy, and as he passed Eric, he wagged a finger at him and gaily said, "You rogue." Next thing I was giving Eric my man-your-home hug, and he was kissing me and cracking my ribs and saying, "Liebchen, Dopchen," which was fine with me because I do love him and I'm a good lover, and as much a doubleganger as he is. We had just pulled back from each other to get a breath. His blue eyes looked so sweet in his worn face, when there was a thud behind us. With the snapping of the tension, Doc had fallen off his bar stool and his top hat was over his eyes. As we turned to chuckle at him, Maud squeaked, and we saw that the Roman had walked straight up against the void and was marching along there steadily without gaining a foot, like it does happen, his black uniform melting into that inside-your-head gray. Maud and Bo rushed over to fish him back, which can be tricky. The thin gambler was all courtly efficiency again. Sid supervised from a distance. "What's wrong with him?" I asked Eric. He shrugged. Overdue for change shock, and he was nearest the stun guns. His horse almost threw him. Mein Gott. You should have seen St. Petersburg, Liebchen, the Nevsky Prospect. The canals flying by like reception carpets of blue sky, a cavalry troop in blue and gold that blundered across our escape, fine women in furs and ostrich plumes, a monk with a big tripod and his head under a hood. It gave me the horrors seeing all those zombies flashing past and staring at me in that sick, unawakened way they have, and knowing that some of them, say the photographer, might be snakes. Our side in the change war is the spiders. The other side is the snakes. Though all of us, spiders and snakes alike, are doublegangers and demons too, because we're cut out of our lifelines in the cosmos. Your lifeline is all of you from birth to death. We're doublegangers because we can operate both in the cosmos and outside of it, and demons because we act reasonably alive while doing so, which the ghosts don't. Entertainers and soldiers are all demon doublegangers, whichever side they're on, though they say the snake places are simply ghastly. Zombies are dead people whose lifelines lie in the so-called past. What were you doing in St. Petersburg before the ambush? I asked Eric. That is, if you can talk about it. Why not? We were kidnapping the infant Einstein back from the Snakes in 1883. Yes, the Snakes got him, Liebchen, only a few sleeps back, endangering the West's whole victory over Russia, which gave your dear little Hitler the world on a platter for 50 years, and got me loved to death by your sterling troops in the liberation of Chicago. But which leads to the ultimate victory of the Spiders and the West over the Snakes and communism, Liebchen. Remember that. Anyway, our counter-snatch didn't work. The Snakes had guards posted, most unusual, and we weren't warned. The whole thing was a great mess. No wonder Bruce lost his head. Not that it excuses him. The new boy? I asked. Sid hadn't got to him and he was still standing with hooded eyes where Eric had left him, a dark pillar of shame and rage. Yeah, a lieutenant from World War I, an Englishman. I gathered that, I told Eric. Is he really effeminate? Weibischer? He smiled. I had to call him something when he said I was a coward. He'll make a fine soldier, only needs a little more shaping. You men are so original when you spat. I lowered my voice. But you shouldn't have gone on and called him a snake, Eric mine. Schlange? The smile got crooked. Who knows? About any of us. As St. Petersburg showed me, the Snake's spies are getting cleverer than ours. The blue eyes didn't look sweet now. Are you, Liebchen, really nothing more than a good loyal spider? Erich! All right, I went too far. With Bruce and with you too. We're all hacked these days, riding with one leg over the breaking edge. Maud and Bo were supporting the Roman to a couch, Maud taking most of his weight, with Sid still supervising, and the new boy still sulking by himself. The new girl should have been with him, of course, but I couldn't see her anywhere, and I decided she was probably having a nervous breakdown in the refresher, the little jerk. The Roman looks pretty bad, Eric, I said. Ah, Mark's tough. Got virtue, as his people say. And our little starship girl will bring him back to life if anybody can, and if... You call this living, I filled in dutifully. He was right. Maud had 50-odd years of psychomedical experience, 23rd century at that. It should have been Doc's job, but that was 50 drunks back. Maud and Mark, that will be an interesting experiment, Eric said. Reminiscent of Goering's with the frozen men and the naked gypsy girls. You are a filthy Nazi. She'll be using electrophoresis and deep suggestion if I know anything. How will you be able to know anything, Liebchen, if she switches on the couch curtains, as I perceive she is preparing to do? Filthy Nazi, I said and meant. Precisely. He clicked his heels and bowed a millimeter. Erich Friedrich von Hohenwald, Oberleutnant in the army of the Third Reich. Fell at Narvik, where he was recruited by the Spiders. Lifeline lengthened by a big change after his first death, and at latest report Commandant of Toronto, where he maintains extensive baby farms to provide him with breakfast meat, if you believe the handbills of the Voyageurs underground. At your service. Oh, Eric, it's all so lousy, I said, touching his hand, reminded that he was one of the unfortunates resurrected from a point in their lifelines well before their deaths. In his case, because the date of his death had been shifted forward by a big change after his resurrection. And as every demon finds out, if he can't imagine it beforehand, it is pure hell to remember your future. And the shorter the time between your resurrection and your death back in the cosmos, the better. Mine, bless Babadin, was only an action-packed 10 minutes on North Clark Street. Eric put his other hand lightly over mine. Fortunes of the Change War, Liebchen. At least I'm a soldier, and sometimes assigned to future operations. Though why we should have this monomania about our future personalities back there, I don't know. Mine is a stupid Oberst, thin as paper, and frightfully indignant at the Voyageurs. But it helps me a little if I see him in perspective, and at least I get back to the cosmos pretty regularly, Gott sei Dank, so I'm better off than you entertainers. I didn't say aloud that a changing cosmos is worse than none, but I found myself sending a prayer to the Bonnie Dew for my father's repose, that the change winds would blow lightly across the lifeline of Anton A. Forzane, professor of physiology, born in Norway and buried in Chicago. Woodlawn Cemetery is a nice gray spot. That's all right, Eric, I said. We entertainers got mittens too. He scowled around at me suspiciously, as if he were wondering whether I had all my buttons on. Mittens, he said. What do you mean? I'm not wearing any. Are you trying to say something about Bruce's gloves? Which incidentally seemed to annoy him for some reason? No, seriously, Greta. Why do you entertainers need mittens? Because we get cold feet sometimes. At least I do. Got mittens, as I say. A sickly light dawned in his Prussian puss. He muttered, Got mittens. Got mittens. God with us. And roared softly, Greta, I don't know how I put up with you, the way you murder a great language for cheap laughs. You've got to take me as I am, I told him. Mittens and all, thank the bonny Dieu. And hastily explained, That's French, le bon Dieu, the good God. Don't hit me. I'm not going to tell you any more of my secrets. He laughed feebly, like he was dying. Cheer up, I said. I won't be here forever, and there are worse places than the place. He nodded grudgingly, looking around. You know what, Greta? If you'll promise not to make some dreadful joke out of it. On operations, I pretend I'll soon be going backstage to court, the world-famous ballerina Greta Forzane. He was right about the backstage part. The place is a regular theater in the round, with the void for an audience, the void's gray hardly disturbed by the screens masking surgery, refresher, and stores. Between the last two are the bar and kitchen and Beau's piano. Between surgery and the sector where the door usually appears are the shelves and tabourets of the art gallery. The control divan is stage center. Spaced around at a fair distance are 6 big low couches, one with its curtains now shooting up into the gray, and a few small tables. It is like a ballet set, and the crazy costumes and characters that turn up don't ruin the illusion. By no means. Diaghilev would have hired most of them for the Ballet Russe on first sight, without even asking them whether they could keep time to music. Chapter 2. A Right-Hand Glove. Last week in Babylon. Last night in Rome. Hodgson. Beau had gone behind the bar and was talking quietly at Doc, but with his eyes elsewhere, looking very sallow and professional in his white, and I thought, Damballa, I'm in the French Quarter. I couldn't see the new girl. Sid was at last getting to the new boy after the fuss about Mark. He threw me a sign, and I started over with Eric in tow. Welcome, sweet lad. Sidney Lessingham's your host, and a fellow Englishman. Born in King's Lynn, 1564. Schooled at Cambridge. But London was the life and death of me, though I outlasted Bessie, Jimmy, Charlie, and Ollie almost. And what a life. By turns a clerk, a spy, a bawd, the two trades are hand in glove, a poet of no account, a beggar, and a peddler of resurrection tracts. Beau Lassiter, our throats are tinder. At the word poet, the new boy looked up, but resentfully, as if he had been tricked into it. And to spare your throat for drinking, sweet gallant, I'll be so bold as to guess and answer one of your questions, Sid rattled on. Yes, I knew Will Shakespeare. We were of an age, and he was such a modest mind-your-business rogue that we all wondered whether he really did write those plays. Your pardon, faith. But that scratch might be looked to. Then I saw that the new girl hadn't lost her head, but gone to surgery, for a first aid tray. She reached a swab toward the new boy's sticky cheek, saying rather shrilly, "If I might." Her timing was bad. Sid's last words and Eric's approach had darkened the look in the young soldier's face, and he angrily swept her arm aside without even glancing at her. Eric squeezed my arm. The tray clattered to the floor, and one of the drinks that Beau was bringing almost followed it. Ever since the new girl's arrival, Beau had been figuring that she was his responsibility, though I don't think the two of them had reached an agreement yet. Beau was especially set on it because I was thick with Sid at the time, and Maud with Doc, she loving tough cases. "Easy now, lad, and you love me," Sid thundered, again shooting Beau the hold-it look. "She's just a poor pagan trying to comfort you. Swallow your bile, you black villain, and perchance it will turn to poetry." Ah, did I touch you there? Confess, you are a poet. There isn't much gets by Sid, though for a second I forgot my psychology and wondered if he knew what he was doing with his insights. "Yes, I'm a poet, all right," the new boy roared. "I'm Bruce Marchant, you bloody zombies. I'm a poet in a world where even the lines of the King James and your precious will whom you use for laughs aren't safe from snake's slime and the spider's dirty legs. Changing our history, stealing our certainties, claiming to be so blasted all-knowing and best-intentioned and efficient, and what does it lead to? This bloody SI glove. He held up his black-gloved left hand, which still held the mate, and he shook it. What's wrong with the spider issue gauntlet, heart of gold? Sid demanded. And you love us, tell us. While Eric laughed, consider yourself lucky, camarade. Mark and I didn't draw any gloves at all. What's wrong with it? Bruce yelled. The bloody things are both lefts. He slammed it down on the floor. We all howled, we couldn't help it. He turned his back on us and stamped off, though I guessed he would keep out of the void. Eric squeezed my arm and said between gasps, Mein Gott, Liebchen, what have I always told you about soldiers? The bigger the gripe, the smaller the cause. It is infallible. One of us didn't laugh. Ever since the new girl heard the name Bruce Marchant, she'd had a look in her eyes like she'd been given the sacrament. I was glad she'd got interested in something, because she'd been pretty much of a snoot and a wet blanket up until now, although she'd come to the place with the recommendation of having been a real whoopee girl in London and New York in the 20s. She looked disapprovingly at us as she gathered up the tray and stuff, not forgetting the glove, which she placed on the center of the tray like a holy relic. Bo cut over and tried to talk to her, but she ghosted past him, and once again, he couldn't do anything because of the tray in his hands. He came over and got rid of the drinks quick. I took a big gulp right away because I saw the new girl stepping through the screen into surgery, and I hate to be reminded we have it, and I'm glad Doc is too drunk to use it. Some of the arachnoid surgical techniques being very sickening, as I know only too well from a personal experience that is number 1 on my list of things to be forgotten. By that time, Bruce had come back to us, saying in a carefully hard voice, Look here. It's not the dashed glove itself, as you very well know, you howling demons. What is it then, noble heart? Sid asked, his grizzled gold beard heightening the effect of innocent receptivity. It's the principle of the thing, Bruce said, looking around sharply. But none of us cracked a smile. It's this mucking inefficiency and death of the cosmos. And don't tell me that isn't in the cards, masquerading as benign omniscient authority. The spiders, and we don't know who they are ultimately, it's just a name. We see only agents like ourselves. The spiders pluck us from the quiet graves of our lifelines. Is that bad, lad? Sid murmured, innocently straight-faced. And resurrect us if they can, and then tell us we must fight another time-traveling power called the Snakes, just a name too, which is bent on perverting and enslaving the whole cosmos, past, present, and future. And isn't it, lad? Before we're properly awake, we're recruited into the big time and hustled into tunnels and burrows outside our space-time. These miserable closets, gray sacks, puss pockets, no offense to this place, that the spiders have created, maybe by gigantic implosions, but no one knows for certain. And then we're sent off on all sorts of missions into the past and future to change history in ways that are supposed to thwart the Snakes. True, lad. And from then on, the pace is so flaming hot and heavy. The shocks come so fast, our emotions are wrenched in so many directions. Our public and private metaphysics distorted so insanely. The deepest thread of reality we cling to tied in such bloody knots, that we never can get things straight. We've all felt that way, lad, Sid said soberly. Bo nodded his sleek death's head. You should have seen me, camarade. My first 50 sleeps, Eric put in, while I added, us girls too, Bruce. Oh, I know I'll get hardened to it, and don't think I can't. It's not that, Bruce said harshly. And I wouldn't mind the personal confusion, the mess it's made of my spirit. I wouldn't even mind remaking history and destroying priceless, once-called imperishable beauties of the past, if I felt it were for the best. The spiders assure us that, to thwart the Snakes, it is all important that the West ultimately defeat the East. But what have they done to achieve this? I'll give you some beautiful examples. To stabilize power in the early Mediterranean world, they have built up Crete at the expense of Greece, making Athens a ghost city, Plato a trivial fabulist, and putting all Greek culture in a minor key. You got time for culture? I heard myself say, and I clapped my hand over my mouth in gentle reproof. But you remember the dialogues, lad, Sid observed. And rail not at Crete, I have a sweet Keftian friend. For how long will I remember Plato's dialogues? And who after me? Bruce challenged. Here's another. The spiders want Rome powerful, and to date they've helped Rome so much that she collapses in a blaze of German and Parthian invasions a few years after the death of Julius Caesar. This time it was Beau who butted in. Most everybody in the place loves these bull sessions. You omit to mention, sir, that Rome's newest downfall is directly due to the unholy triple alliance the snakes have fomented between the Eastern classical world, Mohammedanized Christianity, and Marxist communism, trying to pass the torch of power futurewards by way of Byzantium and the Eastern Church, without ever letting it pass into the hands of the Spider West. That, sir, is the snake's 3,000-year plan, which we are fighting against, striving to revive Rome's glories. Striving is the word for it, Bruce snapped. Here's yet another example. To beat Russia, the Spiders kept England and America out of World War II, thereby ensuring a German invasion of the New World and creating a Nazi empire stretching from the salt mines of Siberia to the plantations of Iowa, from Nizhny Novgorod to Kansas City. He stopped and my short hairs prickled. Behind me, someone was chanting in a weird, spiritless voice, like footsteps in hard snow. This concludes the first part of 7 total of The Big Time by Fritz Leiber, produced by Best Audiobooks for free.